Ambassador Lisa Martinez walked through the bright corridors of Unity Prime with careful, measured steps. The massive space station hung in the darkness between stars, home to diplomats from across the galaxy. She had been doing this walk for 3 years now, and every alien she passed still looked at her with the same expression. They thought humans were weak. Lisa carried herself like any other diplomat, her simple gray suit clean and pressed. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore the small pin of Earth on her collar. To the tall, purple-skinned Valari who swept past her in flowing robes, she looked like nothing special. To the heavily armored Kron soldiers who guarded the station, she seemed fragile. Even the small, quick-moving Zephyrians barely gave her. At second glance, this was exactly what Earth wanted, the Galactic Council. Chamber was a vast circular room with seats arranged in tiers. Each species had their own section, designed to accommodate their different body types and needs. The humans had been given a small section near the back, just 12 seats for the newest members of the galactic community. Lisa took her usual spot and waited for the session to begin. Chancellor Vexhai of the Zephyrian Trade Union called the meeting to order. His voice came through the translation devices as a series of clicks and whistles, but the meaning was clear. Today they would discuss trade routes through the Outer Rim, where several human colonies had been established in the last few years. The humans continue to expand into uninhabited systems, said High Commander Kethver of the Valari Empire. His tall frame seemed to look down on everyone, even from across the room. They claim these worlds for farming and mining, but we must consider the security implications. Lisa stood slowly, waiting for permission to speak. The other species often forgot that humans needed to be recognized before they could address the council. It was another small way they showed their disrespect. The human representative may speak, Chancellor Vexhai said, his tone suggesting he was doing her a favor. Thank you, Chancellor, Lisa replied in the same calm voice she always used. Our colonies are peaceful settlements. We grow food and extract minerals for trade with other species. We follow all galactic regulations and pay our taxes to the Council. General Thokrin of the Kron Federation laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Peaceful, she says. Tell me, human, what do you know of war? The question hung in the air. Lisa felt the eyes of hundreds of beings from dozens of species watching her. This was a test, the same kind of test humans had been facing for 50 years since they joined the galactic community. We know enough to avoid it, General, she answered simply. War is expensive and destroys more than it creates. We prefer to trade and cooperate. More laughter from the Kron section. The Valari delegates whispered among themselves, probably discussing how pathetic humans were. The Threx Dominion representative said nothing, but their 6 eyes watched Lisa with the cold stare of predators studying prey. Indeed, High Commander Kethver said with a thin smile. Perhaps that is why your species has survived long enough. To reach the stars, you know your place? Lisa nodded politely, but inside she was thinking of Admiral Stone's words from her last briefing on Earth. Let them think what they want to think. Let them believe we are weak and harmless. When the time comes, they will learn the truth. The session continued with discussions about shipping lanes and mineral rights. The humans were given the scraps, the dangerous routes through asteroid fields, and the rights to mine worlds that other species considered too difficult or unprofitable. Lisa accepted everything with grace and thanks, playing her role perfectly. After the session ended, Lisa walked back to her quarters on the diplomatic level. Her rooms were small compared to the grand suites given to the major species, but they were comfortable. She poured herself a cup of coffee, one of the few luxuries she allowed herself, and activated her secure communication link to Earth. Admiral Stone's face appeared on the screen, his gray hair and weathered features showing the strain of command. Behind him, Lisa could see the familiar blue and green of Earth through the viewport of his ship. How did it go today? He asked. The same as always, Lisa replied. They think we are children playing with adult toys. The Kron are getting bolder with their insults, and the Valari are starting to ask questions about our colony expansion. Stone nodded grimly. Intelligence suggests they are planning something. 3 of our outer colonies have reported strange ships in their systems. Ships that disappear when our patrols arrive. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Are they testing us? Maybe, or maybe they are preparing for something bigger. Stone paused, his expression growing darker. Lisa, I need you to be ready. If this situation escalates, you know what has to happen. I know, she said quietly. 50 years of pretending to be harmless. 50 years of letting them think we are weak. But if they push too far, then the galaxy will learn why Earth is classified as a death world, Stone finished, and why humans are the species that survived on it. The communication ended, leaving Lisa alone with her thoughts. She walked to her window and looked out. At the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonists were living their lives, growing crops, raising families, and building new homes on distant worlds. They trusted that Earth would protect them, that the facade of weakness was worth maintaining. For their safety, but Lisa knew the truth that the galaxy had forgotten. Humans were not weak, they were not harmless. They were the descendants of a species that had fought and clawed their way to the top of the food chain on a world that wanted them dead. Every human carried the genes of survivors, warriors, and hunters who had refused to give up when everything was against them. The other species looked at humans and saw soft skin, small claws, and weak teeth. They saw a species that preferred talking to fighting, cooperation to conquest. They were right about those things, but they missed the most important fact of all. Humans chose to be civilized. They were not born that way, and if the galaxy pushed them too far, they would remember that civilization was a choice, not a weakness. They would remember that their ancestors had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that would have destroyed any other species. They would remember that mercy was a gift, not a right. Lisa finished her coffee and prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring another day of diplomatic smiles and careful words. Another day of letting alien species think they were superior to the humans, who sat quietly in the back of the council chamber. But if her worst fears were right, those days were numbered. And when they ended, the galaxy would learn a lesson that every species would remember for generations to come. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora, watching the stars through the main viewport. His ship floated near the edge of human space, officially on a routine patrol mission. The Aurora looked like a simple transport vessel, her hull painted in the peaceful colors of Earth's diplomatic fleet. But Jake knew better than anyone that looks could be deceiving. "Captain, we have an incoming message from Unity Prime," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls, her face growing pale as she read the transmission. "Put it through," Jake ordered, his voice steady despite the growing tension in his chest. Ambassador Martinez appeared on the main screen, her face drawn with worry. "Captain Morrison, I need you to change course immediately. Proceed to the New Haven colony in the Kepler system. We have lost all contact with them as of 4 hours ago." Jake felt his blood turn cold. New Haven was home to 50,000 people, including families with children. It was one of the newer colonies, built around farming and light manufacturing. The kind of place where humans went to start fresh and build a peaceful life. "What was their last transmission?" he asked. "They reported unknown ships approaching their system," Martinez replied. The message cut off mid-sentence. "Jake, I need you to find out what happened, but be careful, play your role. If anyone asks, you are a merchant vessel responding to a distress call." The screen went dark, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts. He turned to his crew, all of whom had heard the conversation. They were good people, trained for this exact situation, but hoping they would never need to use their training. "Amy, set course for New Haven, best speed," he ordered. "Aye, Captain," she replied, but her voice shook slightly. The Aurora began to move, her engines humming softly. To any observer, she would look like just another human ship going about its business. But Jake knew that beneath her plain exterior, the Aurora carried weapons that could destroy an entire fleet, and armor that could withstand attacks from the most advanced alien warships. 3 days later, they reached the Kepler system. What they found there made Jake's worst fears come true. New Haven was gone. The colony that had been home to thousands of humans was nothing but burning ruins scattered across the planet's surface. The orbital stations were twisted metal floating in space, their lights dark and cold. Life signs? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Ben Carter. The ship's engineer checked his instruments twice before responding. Nothing, Captain. No human life signs anywhere in the system. Jake closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the families who had lived here. The children who had played in the colony's parks. The farmers who had worked so hard to make the alien soil grow earth. Crops. All of them gone. Amy, scan for any surviving technology. Data recorders, communication logs, anything that might tell us what happened here. Amy's fingers flew across her controls. I found something, Captain. A damaged probe drifting near the third moon. It has a partial recording from the colony's defense system. Put it on screen. The recording was broken and filled with static, but Jake could see enough to understand what had happened. Ships with the markings of the Kron Federation and the Valari Empire had attacked the colony without warning. The humans had tried to surrender, sending peaceful messages and offering to evacuate. The attackers had ignored them and continued their assault until nothing was left alive, but the worst part came at the end of the recording. Jake could hear the voices of the alien commanders, laughing as they hunted down the escape pods carrying women and children. They were enjoying themselves, treating the massacre like a game. Captain, Amy said quietly, there's more. I found evidence of similar attacks on 3 other colonies. All of them were completely destroyed. Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. For 50 years, humanity had played the role of the weak, peaceful species. They had endured insults and accepted scraps from the galactic community. They had done this to protect their people and build a better future, but their restraint had been mistaken for weakness. And now that weakness was being used against them. Ben, send a coded message to Admiral Stone. Tell him we need to meet at the emergency coordinates. Full priority. Aye, Captain. Jake looked out at the ruins of New Haven one last time. Somewhere in that wreckage were the remains of people who had trusted Earth to protect them. People who had believed that being peaceful and civilized would keep them safe. 2 days later, the Aurora met with Admiral Stone's flagship, the Defiant, at a hidden asteroid base deep in unexplored space. The base had been built in secret over the past 20 years, one of dozens of facilities that the galactic community knew nothing about. Jake stood in the Admiral's ready room, along with commanders from across the human fleet. The faces around the table were grim, but Jake could see something else in their eyes. Anger, cold, controlled anger that had been building for 50 years. The attacks were coordinated, Admiral Stone began, his voice deadly quiet. Intelligence confirms that the Kron Federation and the Valari Empire are working together. They have been testing our defenses, seeing how far they can push us before we react. What about the Council? Asked Commander Sarah Collins from the Research Division. The Council is either involved or too weak to stop it, Stone replied. Either way, they have failed to protect human citizens. We are on our own, Jake spoke up. Sir, I reviewed the attack recordings. They were not trying to conquer our colonies. They were trying to exterminate us. This was not war, this was attempted genocide. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what those words meant. For 50 years, humanity had followed the galactic rules of war, even when other species bent or broke them. But genocide was different. Genocide meant the gloves came off. Admiral Stone stood up slowly, his weathered face showing the weight of command. Gentlemen, ladies, the masquerade is over. For half a century, we have pretended to be weak so that other species would underestimate. U.S. We have built our fleets in secret, trained our soldiers in hidden facilities, and developed weapons that surpass anything in the galaxy. He paused, looking each of them in the eye. They wanted to see what happens when you threaten a species from a death world. They wanted to test our resolve. They have murdered our children and laughed while doing it. The Admiral's voice grew colder. It is time to show them what humans are truly capable of. It is time to remind the galaxy why Earth is classified as A death world, and why the species that survived on it should never be pushed too far. Jake felt a chill run down his spine, but it was not fear. It was anticipation. For 50 years he had been trained to hide his true capabilities, to pretend that his ship was just a transport vessel and his crew were just merchants and diplomats, but Jake Morrison was not a merchant. He was a warrior from a species of warriors, descended from people who had fought their way to the top of the food chain on a world that wanted them dead. And now, finally, he was going to show the galaxy what that meant. The war councils began immediately. Plans that had been prepared for decades were taken out of storage and updated. Ships that had been disguised as merchants and explorers began to reveal their true nature. And across human space the word went out. The day the Deathworlders stopped playing nice had arrived. Admiral Stone stood in the command center of the hidden asteroid base, watching as his officers prepared for what would change the galaxy forever. Around him, screens showed the positions of human ships across known space. Ships that had been pretending to be merchants, explorers, and diplomats for 50 years were about to reveal their true nature. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Commander Nancy Foster from her station. Her voice was calm, but Stone could see the fire in her eyes. Nancy had lost her brother in the New Haven massacre, and she was ready for payback. Stone nodded and activated the galaxy-wide communication system. Every ship, every station, every planet with communication equipment would receive his message. He had rehearsed these words many times, but now that the moment had come, he felt the weight of history on his shoulders. "This is Admiral Richard Stone of the Terran Defense Force," he began, his voice carrying across the void to billions of listening ears. "For 50 years we have played by your rules. We have adopted your customs and respected your boundaries. You have mistaken our restraint for weakness. You have murdered our children. This ends now." The message was simple, but every species in the galaxy understood its meaning. The humans were done pretending to be weak. On Unity Prime, Ambassador Martinez watched the alien diplomats as they received the broadcast. The Villari delegates looked confused, the Krons seemed amused, and the Zephyrians appeared worried. None of them truly understood what was about to happen. High Commander Kethver of the Villari Empire stood up in the council chamber, his tall frame radiating arrogance. "Empty threats from a primitive species," he announced. "The humans have no real military. They are farmers and traders, nothing more." Martinez smiled for the first time in months. "Commander Kethver, you are about to learn why that assumption was a mistake." Across the galaxy, the transformation began. Captain Morrison's ship Aurora was the first to reveal itself. The plain gray hull began to shift and change as hidden. Panels slid open. Weapon systems emerged from concealed compartments. Armor plating extended from the ship's core. Within minutes, the simple transport vessel had become a battleship that could destroy an entire fleet. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez watched her instruments with amazement. "Captain, the ship is reading 40% larger than before. All weapons systems are online. I am detecting energy signatures that should not be possible," Morrison smiled grimly. "Amy, meet the real Aurora. She has been waiting 50 years for this moment." Similar transformations were happening throughout human space. The merchant vessel Prosperity revealed itself to be a heavy cruiser armed with weapons that could crack planets. The research ship Discovery unfolded like a flower, showing missile tubes and energy cannons that defied galactic understanding of physics. On the farming world of Redemption, the ground itself began to move. Massive doors opened in fields that had grown corn and wheat for decades. From underground hangars came ships that had been hidden for generations. Fighters, bombers, and assault vessels rose into the sky like a metal storm. Colonel Nancy Foster stood in the command center of the battleship Vengeance, watching as her fleet prepared for the first human military operation in 50 years. Her target was the Kron staging area at Proxima Station, where the aliens had been planning their next attacks on human colonies. "All ships, this is Colonel Foster," she announced over the fleet communications. "Today we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten a species from a death world. Today we remind them why humans are the apex predators of Earth. The human fleet moved through space like a pack of wolves, silent and deadly. Their ships used stealth technology that made them invisible to alien sensors. Their weapons were based on principles that the galactic community had never discovered. Their tactics came from centuries of warfare on a planet where only the strongest survived. At Proxima Station, General Thokran of the Kron Federation was meeting with his officers when the alarms began to sound. His communications officer, a young Kron named Bakhtar, turned to him with confusion on his face. "General, our sensors are detecting ships approaching the station, but they do not match any known designs," Bakhtar reported. Thokran laughed, his voice like grinding metal. "Probably more human merchants come to beg for scraps. Tell them to go away before we destroy them for sport." But when the first human ship decloaked directly in front of the station, Thokran stopped laughing. The vessel was twice the size of his flagship and covered in weapons that seemed to bend light around them. "This is Colonel Foster of the Terran Defense Force," came a voice over the communication system. "General Thokran, you are charged with the murder of 50,000 human civilians at New Haven. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic law." Thokran's face twisted with rage. "You dare threaten us, human? We will show you what real warriors can do." The Kron fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around the station. But when the light faded, the human ships were still there, their shields absorbing the attack like it was nothing. "Your turn," Foster said quietly. The human counterattack was swift and precise. Weapons that manipulated matter at the atomic level tore through Kron armor like paper. Energy beams that existed in dimensions the aliens had never discovered cut their ships in half. Within minutes, the pride of the Kron fleet was floating debris, but the humans did not stop there. They boarded the damaged ships, moving through the corridors like shadows. The Kron soldiers, who had thought themselves the greatest warriors in the galaxy, found themselves facing opponents who fought with a coordination and brutality that came from millions of years of evolution on a world where everything was trying to kill them. Commander Alex Turner led the boarding party on General Thokran's flagship. His Marines moved through the ship like they had been born for this kind of fighting. They used the ship's own structure against the defenders, turning every corner into a trap and every room into a killing field. When they reached the bridge, they found General Thokran cowering behind his command chair. The great Kron warrior who had laughed while murdering human children was shaking with fear. "Please," he begged, "we surrender. We did not know you were real warriors." Turner looked down at the alien who had ordered the destruction of New Haven. "General, you made a mistake. You thought that because we chose to be civilized, we had forgotten how to be savage. You were wrong." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. The Villari flagship Glorious Purpose was being systematically dismantled by Captain Morrison's task force. The Threx command ship Dominator was boarded by human marines who moved through its corridors like ghosts. The Zephyrian trade routes were being severed by human vessels that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. In the space of 72 hours. The galaxy's understanding of humanity was completely shattered. The weak, peaceful species that had sat quietly in the back of the Galactic Council was revealed to be the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Sarah Collins, head of the Terran Research Division, broadcast to the galactic scientific community from her laboratory on Earth, behind her. They could see technologies that should have been impossible. Force field generators that could protect entire planets. Faster-than-light communications that ignored the laws of physics. Weapons that could destroy stars. "For 50 years we have pretended to be primitives," she announced. "We have let you believe that you were our superiors in technology and military might. This was a lie. We have been holding back technologies that could revolutionize the galaxy, waiting for the day when we might need them." That day had arrived. On Unity Prime, Ambassador Martinez stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council. The chamber was only half full, as many species had recalled their representatives in panic. Those who remained looked at her with a mixture of fear and respect that had been absent for 50 years. You wanted to see what humans were truly capable of, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. You have awakened something that has been sleeping for 50 years. Our ancestors conquered a world where everything was trying to kill them. You are not trying hard enough. The message was clear. The galaxy had pushed the humans too far, and now they would face the consequences. The day the Deathworlders stopped playing nice had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. The war lasted exactly 1 week. Admiral Stone had not planned it that way, but the alien forces crumbled faster than anyone had expected. What the galaxy had thought was humanity's first battle was actually their complete victory. On the 4th day, the Kron homeworld of Kraxus found itself surrounded by a human fleet that had appeared without warning. The massive orbital defense platforms that had protected the planet for 1,000 years were disabled in minutes by weapons that seemed to ignore their shields entirely. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the world that had spawned the species responsible for the New Haven massacre. The planet was beautiful in its own way, with red continents and silver oceans that reflected the light of twin suns. Millions of Kron lived on that world, including civilians who had nothing to do with the attacks on human colonies. "Admiral," said Commander Foster from her station, "we have incoming transmissions from the planetary government." "They are requesting terms for surrender?" Stone nodded slowly. This was the moment that would define what humanity became. They had the power to destroy entire worlds, to wipe out the species that had wronged them. But that was not who they were. "Open a channel to the planet," he ordered. The face of Chancellor Grokmar appeared on the screen. The old Kron leader looked tired and defeated, his scarred face showing the weight of his species' actions. "Admiral Stone," Grokmar said, his voice translated through the communication system, "we surrender unconditionally. We ask only that you spare our civilians." Stone studied the alien leader for a long moment. "Chancellor, your military attacked our colonies without provocation. They murdered 50,000 human civilians, including children. They laughed while doing it. Why should we show mercy to your people when you showed none to ours?" Grokmar's head dropped. "Because that is who you are, Admiral. We have seen your forces in action. You could have destroyed our fleets completely, but you disabled them instead. You could have killed our soldiers, but you captured them. You are not like us." Stone felt the eyes of his crew on him. They had all lost friends or family in the attacks. They wanted justice, maybe even revenge. But they also understood what separated humans from the species that had tried to destroy them. "You are right, Chancellor," Stone said finally. "We are. Not like you, we do not murder children. We do not destroy worlds for sport. But make no mistake, your species will answer for what it has done." The surrender of the Kron homeworld sent shockwaves through the galaxy. If the humans could blockade the most militaristic species in known space, what could they do to everyone else? On the 5th day, the Velari Empire made their move. High Commander Kethver assembled the largest fleet in Velari history, over 3,000 ships including their most powerful dreadnoughts. He was convinced that the humans had simply gotten lucky with the Kron, and that Velari technology and tactics would prove superior. Captain Morrison received the order to intercept the Velari fleet with mixed feelings. He respected the Velari. As opponents, they were skilled and honorable in their own way. But they had chosen to side with those who murdered human children. The battle took place near the Centauri system, where the Velari fleet waited in perfect formation. Their ships were works of art, sleek and beautiful, with hulls that seemed to shimmer in the starlight. They had been the dominant space power for centuries, and their confidence showed. Morrison's task force consisted of only 50 ships, but each one was a masterpiece of human engineering. The Aurora led the formation, her hull now showing the true lines of a predator built for war. "Incoming transmission from the Velari flagship," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. High Commander Kethver appeared on the screen, his purple skin darker than usual with anger. "Captain Morrison, you are outnumbered 60 to 1. Surrender now and your crews will be treated well." Morrison smiled, and for the first time in 50 years he let his true feelings show. Commander Kethver, you have made the same mistake that everyone else has made. You think that numbers matter more than capability. You are about to learn why that is wrong. The Valori fleet attacked with precision and grace, their energy weapons creating patterns of light that were almost beautiful, but the human ships moved through the attack like dancers, their hulls absorbing damage that should have destroyed them. When the humans counterattacked, the Valari discovered that their opponents had been studying them for 50 years. Every weakness in their ship designs, every flaw in their tactics, every limitation of their technology had been catalogued and prepared for. The Aurora's main gun fired once, and the Valari flagship simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, not damaged, but erased from reality as if it had never been there. The sight of their command ship vanishing broke the spirit of the Valari fleet. All ships, this is Acting Commander Veltar of the Valari fleet, came a shaking voice over the communication system. We surrender. Please, no more destruction. Morrison felt no satisfaction in the victory. The Valari had been worthy opponents, but they had chosen the wrong side. Valari ships, power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that attempts to flee will be disabled. On the 6th day, the Threx Dominion made their last stand. The Threx had always considered themselves the apex predators of the galaxy, a species of hunters who had conquered dozens of worlds through sheer brutality. They refused to surrender, convinced that their warriors could defeat any enemy in close combat. Commander Turner led the assault on the Threx fortress world of Thrax Prime. The planet was a monument to conquest, its surface covered with the bones of species the Threx had destroyed. The Threx had built their capital city from the skulls of their enemies, and they expected to add human bones to their collection. The human landing forces came down in pods that moved too fast for the Threx defenses to track. Within hours, human soldiers were fighting in the streets of the capital city, moving through the urban landscape like it was their natural habitat. The Threx discovered that their reputation as the galaxy's greatest warriors was about to be challenged. Human soldiers moved with a coordination that came from millions of years of pack hunting. They used the city's own structures against the defenders, turning every building into a fortress and every street into a killing field. Supreme Hunter Gextar, leader of the Threx Dominion, made his final stand in the Bone Palace at the center of the capital. He was surrounded by his best warriors, aliens who had never known defeat in personal combat. Turner found him there, standing among the skulls of 100 species. The Threx leader was massive, nearly 8 feet tall with 6 arms and claws that could tear through steel. He had never retreated from a fight in his life. Human, Gextar snarled, his voice like grinding stone. You think you can defeat me? I have killed warriors from 50 worlds. I will add your skull to my collection. Turner looked around the room at the bones of the dead, the monuments to genocide that the Threx had built. Hunter Gextar, you made a mistake. You thought that? Because you were predators, you were the apex predators. But you have never faced a species from a death world. The fight was brief and brutal. Gextar was strong and fast, but Turner fought with the instincts of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on Earth. When it was over, the Supreme Hunter lay defeated among the bones of his victims. We surrender, whispered one of the surviving Threx warriors. We understand now. You are what we pretended to be. On the 7th day, the Zephyrian Trade Union sent a message to Admiral Stone. They had watched the destruction of the 3 great military powers of the galaxy, and they wanted no part of humanity's wrath. Admiral Stone, said Trade Administrator Vex High, his small frame shaking with fear, the Zephyrian Trade Union formally requests peace negotiations. We had no part in the attacks on your colonies. Stone looked at the alien merchant with something that might have been pity. Administrator Vex High, you may not have attacked our colonies, but you profited from the trade routes that those attacks were meant to secure. You knew what was happening and chose to remain silent. We were afraid, Vex High admitted. We are not warriors like the Kron or the Threx. We are merchants and traders. Then you will make amends as merchants and traders, Stone replied. You will compensate the families of those killed in the attacks. You will provide free transport for human refugees. And you will remember that neutrality in the face of genocide is not neutrality at all. By the end of the 7th day, the war was over. The combined fleets of the galaxy's great powers had been defeated by a species that had pretended to be weak farmers and merchants. The human victory was so complete that some alien historians would later argue that it had not been a war at all, but a demonstration. Admiral Stone stood in his ready room, looking out at the stars that now belonged to a very different galaxy. In 1 week, humanity had gone from being the species that everyone ignored to the power that everyone feared, but fear, Stone knew, was not the same as respect. And respect was not the same as peace. The real work was just beginning. 10 years had passed since the week that changed the galaxy forever. General Kevin Hayes stood in the great assembly hall of New Unity Station, watching as representatives from hundreds of species took their seats. The old Galactic Council was gone, replaced by something that worked better for everyone involved. The station itself was a symbol of the new order. Built by human engineers but designed with input from every species in the galaxy, it floated in neutral space where no single power could claim dominance. The meeting halls were large enough for the massive Gordic delegates and small enough that the tiny Squeep representatives could be heard. Every species had a voice here, but some voices carried more weight than others. Hayes looked over the assembly and remembered the old days when humans sat in the back corner, ignored and dismissed. Now the human delegation sat at the center of the hall, not because they demanded it, but because everyone else had put them there. The session will come to order, announced Chancellor Lisa Martinez, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. She had been elected to lead the new galactic government by unanimous vote, something that had never happened in the history of interstellar politics. The first item on the agenda was the annual report from the Reconstruction Committee. Captain Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood to address the assembly. His hair had gone gray over the past decade, but his voice was still strong. 10 years ago, this galaxy was ruled by fear and dominated by the strong, he began. Species lived in constant worry that their neighbors might attack them. Trade was controlled by those with the biggest fleets. The weak were ignored and the defenseless were destroyed. He paused, looking around the hall at faces that represented every corner of known space. Today, we have something different. We have peace, not because everyone is weak, but because everyone knows that the strong will protect them. In the Kron section, former General Thokrin sat with his delegation. The old warrior had spent 3 years in human rehabilitation facilities, learning about the species he had tried to destroy. When he emerged, he had become one of the strongest advocates for the new order. The humans could have destroyed us, he said when called to speak. They had the power to wipe out our homeworld and scatter our people across the galaxy. Instead, they taught us about honor and mercy. They showed us that strength without wisdom is just cruelty. The Kron delegation had been among the first to accept the new Galactic Accords. Their warriors now served alongside human soldiers in the Galactic Peace Force, learning tactics and discipline that had transformed them from raiders into protectors. In the Villari section, High Commander Kethver had been replaced by a younger leader named Valana. She had been a junior officer during the war, one of the few Villari who had questioned the wisdom of attacking human colonies. The Villari Empire acknowledges our errors, she said when her turn came. We let pride blind us to the truth about our human neighbors. We paid the price for that blindness, but we also learned from it. Today, Villari ships work alongside human vessels to protect the trade routes that we once sought to control. The Threx delegation was led by Hunt Leader Kekstar, the younger brother of the Supreme Hunter who had died fighting Commander Turner. The Threx had changed the most of all the species, abandoning their culture of conquest for one of protection. We were predators, Kekstar admitted to the assembly. We hunted the weak and destroyed the defenseless. The humans showed us what real predators do. They protect their pack, and they make the pack stronger by including others. The Zephyrian Trade Union had prospered under the new order. With the protection of human fleets, their merchant vessels could travel safely through regions that had been too dangerous for decades. Trade Administrator Vexhai had been promoted to Economic Coordinator for the entire galaxy. Commerce flows like never before, he reported happily. Piracy has dropped by 90%. New trade routes open every month. The galaxy is richer and safer than it has ever been. But the real test of the new order came when new threats emerged. The Corvan Hive, a species from outside the galaxy, had begun attacking Outer Rim colonies. Their ships were unlike anything anyone had seen, and their technology seemed to ignore the laws of physics. When the first reports came in, there was panic among the non-human species. The Corvans seemed unstoppable, their swarm tactics overwhelming traditional defenses. Some wondered if humanity would abandon their allies when faced with a real challenge. Admiral Stone, now in his 70s but still sharp, addressed those concerns directly. "We did not build this piece so that we could abandon it when times get hard," he said. "We built it because we knew that hard times would come. Today we face them together." The response was swift and decisive. Human fleets moved to intercept the Corvan advance, while scientists from every species worked together to understand the alien technology. The Kron provided warriors, the Valari offered their manufacturing capabilities, and the Zephyrians coordinated the logistics. The battle against the Corvan Hive lasted 6 months, but it was never really in doubt. The galaxy that had once been divided by fear and competition now fought as one. When the Corvan finally retreated back to whatever dark space they had come from, they left behind a galaxy that was stronger and more unified than ever. Commander Turner, now General Turner, led the final assault on the Corvan command ship. His strike team included Kron warriors, Valari technicians, and Threx hunters, all working together with the precision of a human military unit. "This is what we fought for," he said as they secured the alien vessel. "Not just to protect humans, but to build something better for everyone." The victory celebration lasted for weeks, with every species contributing their own traditions and customs, but the real celebration was quieter and more personal. It was the sight of children from a dozen species playing together in the station's parks, protected by the knowledge that their guardians were watching over them. Dr. Sarah Collins, now the head of the Galactic Research Institute, stood in her laboratory looking at the latest discoveries. Technologies that had been impossible 10 years ago were now routine. Medical advances that could extend life and cure diseases that had plagued entire species. Energy systems that could power entire star systems without harming the environment. "We held back for 50 years, she mused to her assistant, a young Valari scientist named Taran. "We pretended to be primitive while we developed all of this. But maybe that was the right thing to do. Maybe the galaxy needed to learn some lessons before it was ready for these gifts." Taran nodded thoughtfully. "Dr. Collins, do you think the humans will ever go back to hiding their true nature?" Collins smiled. "Taran, we were never hiding our true nature. We were just waiting for the right time to show it. Our true nature is not our weapons or our technology. It is our willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves." On the observation deck of New Unity Station, Ambassador Martinez stood with her granddaughter, a young girl named Emma who had been born after the war. Emma had never known a galaxy where humans were considered weak or where species lived in fear of each other. "Grandma," Emma asked, "why do they call Earth a death world?" Martinez smiled and pointed to the stars visible through the great windows. "Because Earth taught us how to survive, Emma. It taught us how to be strong and how to be smart. But most importantly, it taught us how to take care of each other. Is that why everyone listens to us now?" "They listen to us because we listen to them," Martinez replied. "We protect them because they trust us to protect them. And we lead them because we remember that leadership is about service, not power." As the years passed, the story of the day the Deathworlders stopped playing nice became legend. Children across the galaxy learned about the week when everything changed, when the quiet species from the small blue world revealed their true nature and reshaped the order of things. But the real lesson was not about human strength or technology. It was about what happened when a species that had learned to be civilized chose to remain civilized even when they had the power to be otherwise. The galaxy remembered not just the day humans revealed their fangs, but the day they chose to use those fangs to protect rather than destroy Da, and in the end, that made all the difference.